38 years ago this week, Ozzy and Ricky put pen to paper on their move to the lane, and the rest, as they say, is history. But is the boy Goetze about to become another Spurs superstar signing? Probably not, but to dare is to do and all that. This is your e-Spurs podcast summer show.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs!
Hi guys, welcome back to the e-Spurs podcast for your summer show. Don't forget, you guys play a major part in every podcast we produce, so subscribe to the show via iTunes or Acast and make sure you get every new episode direct as it's released as we move into the new season. We're also across your social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram at @e_Spurs, and check us out on Facebook. That's facebook.com/e-Spurs, page or one word. And we're also on Google+, YouTube, Pinterest and Tumblr. To get all the links for the e-Spurs platforms, as we always say, just head to our website. That's www.espurs.blogspot.co.uk, and I promise you there'll be a new, easier to remember web address for the new season. On the e-Spurs podcast summer show tonight, we'll review the events of the summer so far. New kit, tick. New stadium to come. New signings, tick. Same old British weather, tick. And hasn't it just? We've waited for the sun, I should say, all summer long, but it's here at last. And to get our podcast underway, let's introduce the team that will be taking you through the next 45 minutes or so. It's Ricky Sachs, John Mannings and Ian Gunn. How you doing, fellas?
Evening, mate.
Very well, thanks, Andy.
Good to be back, isn't it, lads? Good to be back talking all things Spurs. We're not quite previewing the season just yet, but it's nice to be back with THFC on our minds. And now, John, I've been reliably informed that you're taking part in the podcast tonight from your luxury yacht off the south of France. How's it going down there, mate?
Oui, bonjour, ça va. Yeah, I wish, mate, I wish.
Listen, don't we all? As I say, we've waited so long for the sunshine. We finally got a little bit this week in the UK. So I hope wherever you are listening to from around the world, you've had a better summer of sunshine than we've had so far. We finally got a little bit this week, so we'll make the most of it as we always do. And of course, we're here to talk all things Spurs. And let's kick off the show, shall we? As I say, there's so much to talk about in the podcast tonight, covering the events of the last few weeks, the summer so far. We've had transfers, the news about the new stadium. There's new kits to talk about, and of course, as we've seen over the last few weeks, the demolition work on the old stadium has started. So that's been interesting to watch as it's progressed throughout the season, throughout the summer. So let's start talking about the transfers, shall we? Because that's what most Spurs fans are talking about at the moment, as you would expect at this point of the summer. The transfer window, 10 days or so old now. So just one transfer in this summer so far. That's Victor Wanyama, £11 million, 25-year-old from Southampton. We know quite a lot about him, of course, because he's been linked for a fair old while now, isn't he? John, let's come to you first on this one. Good signing?
Yeah, without a doubt, mate. I think he ticks all the boxes as far as, what we needed as a... Not even necessarily a backup player, because I do think he'll improve the first team as well as the squad. He's one of them players where he should fit in seamlessly. Let's hope, and we won't miss that, and we won't have that, the kind of gulf that we were talking about last season, whereby one of the important players, especially those two playing deep midfield, if one of them's not there, then it's obvious they're not there. Hopefully the signing of Wanyama will bridge that gap somewhat. But yeah, I think, the fact that he's played with Poch before and he's at a right age, all his stats are so impressive in terms of ball recoveries and, just getting in the way, basically. And that's, the kind of player that I think we'll need, especially throughout the season in the Champions League, where we're playing against clever teams who, they're not going to find it too hard to walk round Tom Carroll or Ryan Mason, possibly. So, yeah, no, I think really good signing, I think.
Certainly looks a bit of a beast, doesn't he? In the pictures I've seen of him so far, the pre-season pictures from the game they played behind closed doors a couple of days ago against Forest, real brute of a player, isn't he? So certainly going to be an asset in the midfield there. But Rick, where does he fit in? Of course, last season we saw the performances of Dele Alli and Dembele in the centre there, Eric Dyer. Also, so will Victor Wanyama come straight into the side, or would you expect him to start from the bench and aim to work his way in?
Well, I think for him, I think he will start because of obviously we've got Dembele who's still on a ban, so I think he will be in the first 4 games at the start of the season, and then judging by how he gets on, he may make the place his own, which we've seen with certain players like Dyer who came into the team last year as a central defensive midfielder. He made the place his own and ended up staying there for the season. So really it depends on how he comes into the team, how he performs, because Pochettino's already shown that if you do perform well, then he's got no doubt in keeping you in the side. So it's a very, very good transfer. And I think if you look at the boxes that, say, John was saying he ticks, his Premier League experience, Champions League experience, played under Poch before, 24 years old, so young, and for 11 million, you have to say it's another Daniel Levy bargain.
Yeah.
It really, really is, and hopefully we can draw on the experience he's got, because I think a lot of fans, we had a great season last season in terms of the league table, but I still think there was that bit of disheartening feeling in terms of how we performed in the cup competitions. And a signing like this will give us that extra bit of depth in the squad midfield to go for the FA Cup and League Cup, because there's no doubt that because we're in the Champions League, I would hope we're going to take that extremely seriously, and therefore we don't want the other cup competitions to suffer. So I really, really hope we are going to mount a challenge on all 4 fronts this season, because as good as last season was, I think I said it, for us really to not have a trophy at the end of it was bitterly disappointing. So I really, really hope that we've got further signs to come that is going to strengthen the squad and allow us to really, really push for some kind of trophy this season.
Yeah, you would hope so. And of course, we later on in the show will be talking about what is success next season, and it's an interesting one because there's lots of different views on Spurs fans, what they view as success for next season and progression. And Ian, in terms of Wanyama coming into the side, we mentioned, didn't we, time and time again on the podcast last season, that bench and how much we needed to add depth to that bench. Victor Wanyama certainly ticks that box, doesn't he?
He certainly does. He's as somebody said, he's a bit of a beast. I think I paid particular attention to his performance against us at the end of last season, with maybe an eye to perhaps us coming back in for him. And I thought he bossed the midfield. Especially I think on the day we were minus Dembele because of the suspensions. But I think that he was a real thorn in our side on that game, and also, could I just say, with a bit of tongue in my cheek, isn't it going to be great to watch some of his social media activity? Because if he can up the sales of spaghetti, we're in clover here. I
was going to say the pasta industry must have loved the signing of Wanyama last week. It must have gone through
definitely.
But fantastic to see, isn't it? And a real asset to the squad. And another player we've been linked with, we're told very close to actually signing. Believe it's probably going to happen tomorrow. Vincent Janssen, of course, from AZ, 17 million or so the fee. 22-year-old, and 27 goals he scored last season in 34 appearances in the Dutch league. So certainly knows where the back of the net is, John. And again, another position that last season all Spurs fans were crying out for an addition there. And this guy certainly looks to know where the back of the net is, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. To be fair, I've only ever seen him play actually live once. That was when Holland beat England at Wembley a few months ago. And even then, I didn't know who he was, to tell you the truth. But he played a decent game and he scored a penalty. And he seems to me that kind of player that, obviously, like, it's important that a striker comes with a proven goal scoring record. I think where we had Clinton and G come in last year, and to a lesser extent Son, where they chip in with goals but they're never going to be prolific. Now what we missed, especially at the start of last season with four games to get a win or whatever it was someone who could come in and ably deputise for Harry Kane if he's not on form. And I've just got a bad feeling that the start of this season for Harry is going to be the same as it was for the last, just because similar scenario really, where he's come off an international tournament, not had a great one, pressure's on him again to perform, and you don't know how right he's going to be in terms of fitness to start the season. So as Ricky was just saying there about where Dembele being missing for the start of the season and Wanyama coming in, it wouldn't surprise me if Janssen is chucked straight in, because it's less of a risk if we need to do that, because he is a proven number 9. We're not playing like a winger up front like a Chadley or a Son. So I personally think it'd be a really, really good signing from what I've seen of him. I just hope that he ends up being, a a Van Nistelrooy as opposed to a Munir El Hamdoui, because we've had some dodgy ones come from Holland in the past. Off subject just a little bit. I'm watching the build-up now to the Euro 2016 final. I must say, I'm very much a heterosexual man. I'm married to a woman, everyone, but there's nothing. I've not seen anything quite as sexy for ages as Hugo Lloris speaking in French. I've got a sweat on and everything now. I'm excited.
He's currently got Edith Piaf playing in the background. Well, now we know why you're down in the south of France, John, on that yacht. Now your secret's out, mate. He's off to the Stade de France. In terms of Kane, John made a great point there, Rick, that Kane may go through the same spell that he went through at the start of last season. However, do you see it maybe going the other way? Do you see Janssen possibly being a spur to Kane almost in terms of the competition that he'll provide? Will that help Kane in some ways?
I certainly hope so, Andy. I think we saw last season the signing of Ben Davies, how that really drove Danny Rose on. Competitions can only be good for the squad. And a lot has been written about Kane and said about Kane. But I think even in the Euros, as poor as he was, the English media in this country have a tendency just to cane the players, excuse the pun. They really, really do. And there's no doubt for me, Harry Kane knows where the back of the net is. Two seasons in a row, he's been top scorer nearly twice. So I've got no doubt that the guy knows where the back of the net is. And it's just not fair the way that players in this country are scapegoated. And I have to say, although I'm born in England, I'm not a massive patriotic in terms of supporting the country. And that's why I always feel I feel sorry for our Spurs players, because they seem to be the ones getting the blame for England's poor performance. And people should remember, it was only 5 Spurs players picked. The rest were of different clubs. It wasn't our fault England went out of the Euros. It's a joint collective effort. And at the end of the day, these Spurs players last season showed over 38 games how good they were, and Kane showed over 38 games how good he was by being the top scorer, golden boot. So in answer to the question, I don't fear at all with Harry Kane. Even last season when he didn't find the net early on, we were all confident the goals would come. And even with players with a 5-6 goal head start, Kane still finishes the golden boot. So I'm not concerned whatsoever by Kane's performances, if you like, in the Euros. With Janssen, I just hope and pray it's not another Soldado, just in terms of the hype and the fact that he obviously done very, very well the season before in the country he played in. But I think a couple of stats I saw with Janssen, which I really, really like, is that he's the first player in 52 years in the Eredivisie to score 20 goals in the second half of a season. And when you consider that he's turned down the biggest club in France for us, he's turned down West Ham. Don't think you could ask for more than that, could you? So let's hope, he can come and deliver, because there's no doubt last season we definitely needed some more goals. And, Janssen will hopefully provide that. Having a brief watch of him on YouTube, and I know you shouldn't base anything off YouTube, difference with Soldado is that he seems to get goals, all around the park, not just inside the box. So he seems to be a player that knows where the back of the net is, sniffs where the back of the net is. And I think, like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if Janssen is thrown into it as quick as possible in terms of the start of the season. But it doesn't mean to take away from the fact, that maybe in the future him and Kane could play together. And I do think, I say this now, I think Clinton NG could possibly be one of the surprises of the season, because no one has spoken about him. He's spoken how he's trained very, very hard throughout this summer. And we've seen with Lamela, it does take that kind of second year to adapt. So it would not surprise me at all if Clinton NG had a really, really good season next season. Wouldn't surprise me.
Let's hope so, because 2-3 strikers would be a huge asset if they're all on form and banging the goals in next season. And G certainly, came in with a lot of hype around him. Another young player, certainly got the pace, hasn't he? But injuries, I think, disrupted his season last season. So let's hope the best is yet to come from him. Now, we've got to talk about this one. I know there are lots of Spurs fans out there who would say it's not going to happen. Don't bother speaking about it. But Ian, we have in the last few days been linked with certain Mario Götze. Tell me it's going to happen.
If you want me to tell you it's going to happen, I'm going to tell you it's going to happen. Although I'm probably in the same camp as our fellow pod member Jason, who thinks that it won't happen, and he's probably about the 85th person we've been linked with over the summer.
At least.
Look, he's going back to what Ricky's just said, he is a World Cup winner. He knows where the goal is. Is it going to happen? Are we going to pay the money? Are we going to disrupt our wage structure to bring him in? If I was a betting man, and I'm not, I'd say no.
and I mean, looking at it realistically, and when, as you quite rightly say there, you got the wages to factor into it. I know I gave it the big build up there, but realistically, I think we're all realistic about it, it's not a Levy type signing, is it?
It's not. It's more of a, dare I say it? It's more of an Alan Sugar type signing. And going back to John on his yacht in the south of France, I was going to say, just if he pooted along a bit, he'd hit Monaco and he might bump into Alan. But but in all seriousness, I think that it's one of those ones where I think it's just paper talk. If it happens, then they're going to run out as Zeds in the club shop, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. I know there's talk of in the papers today of Spurs having met with Götze's agent, who also happens to be his dad, twice during the Euros. We haven't heard anything direct, so who knows? Maybe more paper talk. Although Bild, I do remember Bild, the paper who broke the news, I think they also broke the news about Son coming over, so they were reliable in that sense. Who knows? Maybe I'm just clutching at straws here. Let's wait and see. Certainly be a fantastic addition in there. And although he's not a Levy type signing, you could argue, I guess, that one thing Spurs have maybe not had that other teams in that top six have been doing, even Liverpool to a certain extent, is making those marquee signings and just creating a bit of imagination in there for the fans. And although we've been having a fantastic season last season, we've got a great manager in there now and a really, really good solid squad. Maybe that's one of the things that are missing, that marquee type signing that would maybe push Spurs' exposure to the next level. I've seen quite a few comments on that on social media, and Götze would certainly do that, wouldn't he? Be fantastic to see.
I'll tell you what as well, sorry to jump in, I've just had a quick scout around, and it appears that Dortmund have bid for Andre Schürrle from Wolfsburg, so you'd think that if they were doing that, then they wouldn't also go for Götze.
Plot thickens, eh? The plot thickens. Listen, get my hopes up.
I wished I'd have known that before you'd have answered me that question, because I might have answered that a different way. Knowing that if that's true, that seems to paint a different picture.
Couldn't we take Schürrle as well?
Yeah, we'll have them both.
I wouldn't mind him either, to be honest.
Listen, one of the best things about this Götze transfer has been the reaction of the Liverpool fans. I don't know if you've seen some of the Liverpool fans reacting on Twitter, but they're not too happy, are they? Our friends from up north.
They are brilliant. Fantastic. They love living in the past up there, didn't they? They love living in the past. They are.
See what cracks me up, lads. Right, I see a comment earlier like, why can't Spurs go and scout their own players? Right, this lad scored the winning goal in the World Cup final. You don't.
It wasn't exactly a hidden gem, was he? Yeah.
Exactly. I ain't been scouting him, but I know who he is.
But I tell you what, I mean, in terms of getting excited for the season, there's nothing better than seeing a few new shirts, is there? And Spurs certainly left it late, as always, again this season. And but finally, we've seen the new shirts for the new season. The obviously white home shirt, a little bit of navy on the shoulders, the navy blue and gold away shirt, which has it provoked a bit of a reaction on Twitter, and the third shirt, which has been the most, I think, divisive shirt of the lot on social media, yellow sort of goldy type affair with pinstripes on the front. John, what have you made of the new season's kits?
Well, I must admit, even though I'll be 31 on Thursday, I still am like a child when the new kits get unveiled, and I've ordered the home shirt and the away shirt already. What I'm waiting to do is, I don't know whether that third shirt's going to make me look like a New York cab. So what I think I'll do is I'll get in the club shop and have a look at it up close first before I decide what I'm doing with that one.
I'm reliably informed. I haven't seen them in person, but I'm reliably informed they do look a lot better in person. So, as always with these things, I'd advise going to see them in person.
For once in quite a few years, I thought they looked all right. The cost of them seems to have gone up, which is no surprise to Daniel leaving. I mean, I went today to go and buy the shirt and it had 15 quid to put the Champions League respect and the badges on. I mean, it's 15 quid more than what it was last season, but that's what Champions League pays you for.
Someone's got to pay for Götze, I suppose, Rick.
Well, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah. I tell you what, they're not. I say they don't come cheap, these shirts. To kit out a family. Like at the moment, I'm not in that position where I have to do that. But for John, I guess for his kids, must be a week's wages.
It ain't cheap, mate, but I was like it when I was their age, and luckily it's only my eldest one who's all over them at the minute. The younger two are a little bit behind on that kind of thing. They're not worried about getting a new kit. But yeah, no, you're right, mate. It ain't cheap, but then it's only once a year, innit? I never went without them, so I tried to make sure mine don't go without them either. Going back to what you said about them sleeve badges, mate, it was nice. I bought mine online, and you get to select what badges you want, and the fact that they was there, I was like, yes, I've got to do it, so I've done it.
Absolutely. You look fantastic. Ian, what's your favourite of the lot this time round, mate?
Asking me about fashion sense is a real no go, because this is a guy that walks around in anything that's clean in the cupboard. I would say that my favourite is the blue and gold.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, call me a bit of a snob, but I don't know anything with red on, so I won't be getting the home shirt. And for me, it's got to be the blue. I think the blue's the best of the three. I'll have a look at the yellow one in the shop when we get to go up there, and it might be better in person. But I'm with John. I don't want to be looking like either a pitcher from an American baseball team or a New York Cab.
Bit of a New York Yankees.
That's it.
Style about it, isn't it? It's they do come up with some odd designs, don't they, for football shirts compared to some of the. You look back at some of the Admiral shirts we had, and just even the plain white shirts we had, and just the style of them. I mean, it's just so nice and crisp and clean and Spurs. And now they almost try too hard, don't they? Yeah,
it's like a plain white shirt with a navy blue cockerel on it. I've seen some pictures on social media recently of Jimmy Greaves wearing one, and it's like, that is for me perfection. Yeah. I wouldn't even mind if the AIA was dark blue, but nah, I don't do red.
It's a funny old one, that AIA, isn't it? Because you change it to blue and you've got a completely different shirt almost. It's I'm sure they'd sell a lot more. I'm sure there's something been said there by AIA that they won't budge, but certainly look a lot better anyway. Be interesting to see what they do with the night kits anyway. Listen, lads, we're going to go on to some questions. As always, you guys out there have been fantastic in getting your questions into the e-Spurs team. We do our very best to get those answered for you. Now tonight, lads, we've got loads of questions to get through, so I'm going to ask you to keep your answers as short and sweet as possible if you can, and we'll get through as many as we can, because the guys out there on social media have been great tonight in getting those questions in. So let's go to Rick first up. Rick, this question from Harry Charalambus. He asks, what is deemed as success next season? What league placing and what stage of the Champions League would be a success?
Keeping this short and sweet, I'd say top 4 place and a trophy of some kind would constitute success in my books when you take into account the managers that are joining this league. So that's my answer. In terms of the Champions League, again, you're amongst the elite clubs of Europe. So anything, if you can get to, quarterfinals, I know obviously we had the success in it last time, but anything from the quarterfinals onwards would be a phenomenal achievement. But for me, like I say, top 4 and a trophy would more than constitute success for this Tottenham team.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And as Wembley's going to be our second home, you'd think they'd be quite comfortable there. So who knows? We could go all the way in one of the cups. That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Get a bit of silver in that cabinet again after so long. Next question to Ian. This is from John at JBear67 on Twitter. He asks, what's your prediction for most improved player for the 2016-17 season?
I agree with what was said earlier. Well, I don't know if it was off air or on air, and that's Clinton and G.
Yeah,
I think we'll get a full sort of like pre-season in. We'll get him clear of injuries, and we will see what we invested the money in. So that's my answer.
It's a good shout. And loads of potential in there, you would think. It's certainly got the pace, as I say, so we'll watch this space. Thanks for that one. Next question is from Stephen Benton at Stephen Benton. He asks, this is to John, he asks, is a Götze move only possible if a midfielder is sold, do you think?
I don't think so, no. Just because I think that's probably the area of the pitch where the quality is probably at its most shallow, because if you're talking about... he would play in one of those 3 positions behind the striker. So if you take out Lamela, Eriksson and Ali, then you're already talking about bringing in players like Chadley, who's a bit hot and cold, and maybe putting Son there or NG there. And I think obviously Götze is a massive step up from those players that we've already got. So I would say that it doesn't necessarily, in terms of managing places in the squad, we probably wouldn't have to get rid. But in terms of money, I suppose that would be the key and deciding factor, wouldn't it? Maybe sell to buy, but I just hope we get this one over the line, because it would be a massively, marquee signing. It would excite the fans, and I hope if it's not him, I hope it's someone of a similar ilk, similar position as well, because I think that's what we need.
Yeah, spot on. And if there are people out there listening to us talking about Goetze pulling their hair out and it's stamping their feet, insisting it's not going to happen, just let us dream for a few minutes, and I'm sure our bubble will be burst in a couple of weeks. So we're gonna dream for a little while. On to the next question. This is for Rick. This is from James Irwin 6 on Twitter. He asked, of the players on the peripheral of the side next season, who should stay? So, for example, he's given Mason, Bentaleb, Carroll, Chadley and Pritchard. Which of those do you think will stay and which will go?
That's a tricky question. I mean, for me, I'm already kind of ready to drive Mason and Carroll anywhere they want. And that's no offence to them. I just don't think now, with the kind of quality we've got in the squad, I just think we've outgrown them. And I know we have to be careful, because a lot of people say, don't forget they're homegrown, they're one of our own. And yes, I hear that. But although they're one of our own, they have to still be good enough. And I don't think they are good enough for our squad. So in answer to the question, I would still like to give Bentaleb another season and see if he can come back, maybe a reborn player. And Pritchard, again, I still wouldn't be adverse to giving him an opportunity, because we haven't seen enough of him yet to really make a decision as to whether he's good enough for the squad.
It'd be interesting to see what they do over the next few weeks, because you would think players are going to leave. It was interesting. I saw a photograph yesterday. Somebody tweeted of Pochettino's first training session and the players warming up. I'm sure some of you guys may have seen it also, and every single one of them have gone. So he's certainly had a clear out there. He seems to like these Spurs youngsters, doesn't he? The likes of Carroll, he puts into brings on ahead of Chadley, for example. We saw last season. Pritchard hasn't had a shot really yet in the first team. Bentaleb, injury last season, he's still got to prove, I think, that he's good enough in there. And there's others sort of nipping at the heels. So there's a lot of congestion in our midfield at the moment. Whether or not it's good enough is another matter, but Wanyama certainly changes that a little bit, doesn't he?
I think the issue we've got is, like I say, no one expected to the rise of what Dyer and Ali had, and therefore that has set the bar so very high now that the Mason and Bentaleb partnership of the year before could not contend with that. We've now moved up a level. So in all honesty, I don't see, these players on the periphery, us keeping them, are they good enough for us to even, compete in the cup? So I wouldn't be confident in answering that question, because we saw last season when we did bring in the players to, have to cover, they didn't necessarily do us any favours. So I do think there will be movement. It'd just be interesting to see. I suppose we'll see in pre-season the players that he trusts and the players that necessarily aren't going to be on the plane to certain places on the tours.
Certainly seems to be a good judge, though, doesn't he? We've seen so far. Townsend was a completely different situation, wasn't it? I think there was other things going on there, but so far the players he's let go, he seems to have been justified in that. There will be, however, there'll be a lot out there saying maybe Lennon should have been kept. So time will tell. Time will tell. Last question of the night, lads, goes to Ian, and this is from Dominic Sibley. He asked, any concerns about our 5 England players' confidence after the Euros and the time spent with Hodgson?
There would have been if we didn't have Pochettino as our manager. I think it was pleasing to note that he'd been in contact with them throughout the competition, and he'd been texting them in the end when they went out, when the team went out. So I think Pochettino and his team would have done everything they could to have smoothed the transition back from being a very good player in a poor team to a very good player in a better team. So I haven't got any issues with the 5 coming back, because I think Poch will get them back and firing from day one.
Yeah, I think they'll be only too glad to get back to some club football and playing under Poch again. And certainly the confidence we saw last season was fantastic, wasn't it? From the England contingent at Spurs. Fantastic. Listen, lads, we have run out of time for the questions tonight. We didn't have a chance to get through all of them, but those that we didn't get a chance to answer, I'll pass on to the e-Spurs team via social media, and I'll make sure that they get an answer to you via that, because we appreciate every single one of you getting in touch with us every week, and some cracking questions as always come into us this week. So we'll do that and make sure your questions get an answer. So thanks for that, guys, as always. Now, on to another couple of subjects from the summer that have cropped up. Of course, something very exciting is about to happen to Spurs. We're about to move into a brand spanking new stadium just across the way from the current one. And part of that, we've seen the photographs of the last couple of weeks and months of the northeast corner of the current stadium coming down, and lots of comment and reaction to that via social media. A few sort of emoticon tears being shed I've seen over the last few weeks. And John, it's certainly going to be an emotional one this season to come, isn't it? Seeing, that corner of the stadium gone, and really the old White Hart Lane starting to wind down.
Yeah, it's something I'm not looking forward to tell you the truth. I think, as we were saying off air earlier, seeing all the pictures of the new ground and all that, and it's quite exciting, but now it's actually happening. It's a little bit like the Brexit debate all over again.
Yeah.
It's a shame, because you're looking back at all the history that's gone on in that ground, and all the wonderful personal memories that we've all had in that ground, and that'll be the upsetting thing. But we get in that new ground and with a successful team, and it'll be it won't be forgotten, obviously, but it'll be easier to cope with. Once we're in there, and that's normal. You know what I mean? Because at the minute, it's just the thought of leaving it is probably worse than what it actually will be. I think I'm looking forward to it, really. But yeah, I just hope in the short term, I hope it don't affect the atmosphere too much. And I know I'm bracing myself for what's going to be a pain in the arse getting a ticket next season. So. Even more difficult, than it usually is. But yeah, no, it's got to be done, and it's exciting times, really.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be so many Spurs fans next season, this coming season, desperate to get in there. Say they were there at the last season at the old lane. Rick, where do you stand on this one? I mean, obviously it's sad for all Spurs fans, but is that eased for you with the sight of the new stadium springing up in the background?
Of course, I think John said, we've all got personal memories that we've shared in that stadium, but this is a sign of progress at the end of the day. If they weren't doing anything in terms of works on the stadium, then I'm sure there'd be questions raised saying, well, on a second, we're moving. Why is there no work being done? So, again, it's one of those situations where, of course, it's difficult to handle, because literally around you're seeing buildings come away and seats being removed where obviously friends, family have sat and you've shared memories with. But at the same time, I think, like John said, what we have to remember is the long-term goal and the long-term vision, and that we're going to have a fantastic stadium to move into where we're going to recreate so many memories. And hopefully, like I say, along with these players and this manager, there is a lot to look forward to in the future. And we have to remember that players coming to sign for the club, the stadium is one of the biggest things. We've got a massive fan base out there. And no doubt do we have one of the best training facilities in Europe. But to have a stadium to go with that as well would be phenomenal. And I think someone's seen that. Today I've posted up a tweet just in regards to us having one of the biggest European tier stands on its own that's going to be around. I think Dortmund, I've been told today, is slightly bigger than ours, but we're going to have our own cop, and that is going to be fantastic. Second half, really kind of roaring the players on. That is going to be really, really special. So there's going to be new memories created, and at the same time, of course, there's going to be a little bit of tears and upset, because we're leaving behind a stadium which brought so many memories to us all.
And it certainly has, every single one of us, and not just us, our families, our, grandparents. I'm sure that there's so many memories held from that stadium. And Ian, the big question I want to know is, will you still be sitting in the director's box in the new stadium?
I like John. I'll sit wherever I can get a ticket, mate. So it doesn't really matter to me. It'll bring some sadness for me, because that corner is I think I've sat there off and on. I've sort of like done a bit in the south stand, but most of my last 8-9 years watching Spurs have been in that corner, and sitting there with friends and family. It will be a strange thing to go there and to see that corner gone. But I try to make it a glass half full type person, and I think it'd be different if we were moving out of the area, but as we go and throughout next season, we're gonna start seeing some serious construction work take place, and it will be good that we in fact the new cot that Ricky mentioned earlier, that's going to be where the current north stand is, near enough, so we're not moving far, and we will see it all take place throughout the season, and it'll be different than if we were, like, dare I say it, moving out of the borough. Which another one of the London clubs will be doing next year. So, I'm quite looking forward to it, and I'm almost thinking of whereabouts in that great white wall do I want to be seated, because I think that's going to be the place to be.
Certainly is, absolutely. You can imagine the atmosphere in that stand alone is going to be cracking. So yeah, going to be fantastic. And as part of this decision to move, lads, of course, came the news a couple of weeks ago, just after we recorded the final podcast of the season, that we'll be playing our Champions League games next season at Wembley. We had a big debate, didn't we, on the podcast last season as to where, would be best and where the fans would most like to play these Champions League games. Now we know they're going to be at Wembley. Rick, is that a good decision?
I don't see why it's not. It's going to draw a different... What I'd hope we don't get is a lot of tourists, because in a way you still want the typical Spurs season ticket fan holders to come to the ground, I say the ground, Wembley, and generate the same noise you would get inside White Hart Lane. But naturally, I presume you're going to get fans from all across the UK maybe coming to the games, because it is a very unique stage to have Champions League games, Wembley, but at the same time I hope that brings out more Spurs fans. For me personally, I'm not a season ticket holder, therefore it would be quite hard for me to possibly get a ticket to the Champions League games, and therefore this is a great opportunity for me, my family, to be able to go to these games, and know that, rest assured we should be able to get a ticket, whereas White Hart Lane, that would maybe be a bit harder. So, in answer to the question, I think we may see a different audience, but at the same time, I hope that doesn't detract the atmosphere we're going to need on these Champions League nights, because let's not forget about it, it isn't home. So we have to make it feel like home, and the players have to be comfortable playing there. And the fact 5 of them would have played there in Wembley for England will hopefully play into our hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it'd be great preparation for the following season, when of course Wembley will be our home in the league. So it's a good way, I guess, in sort of getting us settled in bit by bit. And John, is it going to be a help, or do you think it'll be a hindrance playing at Wembley in the Champions League next season?
I personally think, that each time Spurs have gone there in a domestic cup game, it's just the atmosphere has been superb amongst the Spurs fans, and we do naturally create a lot of noise. We're not Arsenal, and I think we have got a big group of fans who are very vocal, and I think it'll help. I don't see why it wouldn't. And as Ricky just said, it's going to be, make life a little bit easier for non-season ticket holders to get a ticket. And I also agree with what you said about tourists, because again, we're not Chelsea, we don't want that. Whatever it is, 50,000 or whatever it is, as long as take out the away fans, the other 40-odd thousand of them are actual Tottenham supporters, and I reckon it will be good for the club, because all right, it might make it a little bit easier for visiting teams to play at Wembley, because it possibly won't be, it's a better ground than White Hart Lane. Unfortunately, it's not as tight, and the fans are not on top of you as much at Wembley. But I think we create some noise there, and I'm really, really looking forward to going there in the Champions League and making some noise myself. So I think it's the right decision.
Is that going to, John? Do you think that's maybe going to be our biggest problem in playing at Wembley? Is that it's a big thing, isn't it? Playing at Wembley, so opposition players are also going to be, up for every single game.
They will, but then our players will be as well.
Yeah.
It's not like, I can't imagine that our players will be too gutted about playing there. I would imagine they'd be looking forward to it. So it's not like they're being forced against their will to play somewhere they don't want to play and they won't really be fancying it. You'd imagine that. I've done stadium tours at both grounds, and I've seen the dressing rooms at both places, so I know where I'd rather prepare for a match. That's without a doubt. So I think it'll be a bit more comfort for the players and a bit easier for them, and I think it'll be good for them as well, because you never know. We might do well in the cups and end up back there for a non Champions League game next season, and you might hope that it'd feel more at home for our players. But yeah, I mean, from a selfish point of view, if you're talking about playing in the small ground and not having a sniff at getting a chance of a ticket, I'd be gutted. But playing at Wembley, hopefully I'll get one, and we'll make some noise and we'll enjoy it there. So no, it's definitely the right decision for me.
I think, as Jace pointed out on the podcast last season, one of our biggest issues to get over will be the fact that we've got to make Wembley home. A stadium, 90,000 stadium full of red seats will be one thing. Getting used to Wembley and the size of the pitch, the atmosphere there, adjusting to all of that will be another thing. So Jace, I should mention, hopefully be back for the podcast at the start of the season. Couldn't make it with us tonight. So Jace, if you're listening, how you doing? And hope you're having a good summer. And Jace will be back with us at the start of next season. But exciting times, isn't it? Wembley to come, Champions League, those badges on the shirts, new stadium, new kit. Fantastic times. Listen, lads, we have come to the end of your summer podcast. Time's run out on us tonight, but thanks for listening to us wherever you are from around the globe. We'll be back for the first e-Spurs podcast of a brand new season, our 4th on the air, around the 7th or 8th of August, so be sure to look out for that. Subscribe to us on iTunes and Acast, and then you'll stay in touch with e-Spurs and get every episode as and when it's released. And we'll build up to another 9 months of Spurs. What a time to come we've got. Exciting times. Don't forget to have your say on the podcast this week via social media. And from Ian, from Ricky, from John and myself, have a great rest of your summer, guys, whatever you do. And as always, come on you Spurs.